I heard that there was a little girl from the Cining Palace who had a decent appearance and was skilled in her skills. She managed to coax the Empress Dowager into loving her dearly. That's all. The first time I saw Emperor Kangxi pouncing on someone's arms, she transformed into a fox and was favored by someone. This is okay. Which family's little fairy is so lawless that it has caused a lot of complaints in the harem? Looking at the jade dumpling with a big stomach who ate the third piece of small dim sum under his eyes, Lord Kangxi had to believe this rumor if he didn't believe it. If it weren't for a little monster, how could he have been fascinated by this rabbit-like girl at the beginning? Different Qing dynasty, different Empress Dowager, let's see how Empress Dowager lies and wins. Keywords of the novel. Empress Dowager Qingchuang, Empress Dowager she took the lying win script without a pop-up window, Empress Dowager Qingchuang, Empress Dowager she took the lying win script complete TXT collection download, Empress Dowager Qingchuang, Empress Dowager she took the lying win script latest chapter read. Chapter 1. Hugging Thighs you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Hugging Thighs hot, the autumn tiger in September is really amazing. The hot air makes the air in front of people twisted. Yushi's eyes were sore, and she blinked hard. Even if a drop of water fell along Yushi's eyelashes and hit the ground, it was unclear whether it was tears or sweat. The ground was covered with a drip of marks. I don't know how long I've been standing in the sun, with layers of sweat pressing down on each other. When my clothes weren't even dry, my eyes turned black in waves. Yushi gritted her teeth and persevered, not to mention taking a break in a cool place. She didn't even dare to move. She finally made a small selection and endured another 2 months of learning the rules. Today, she should have her aunts in each palace take care of the affairs of each palace. If anyone falls or is left behind, they will only be included in the Zinseku, and then be assigned to work. Although she is not a criminal or lowly person, it is still better than being in front of the master. Since her time traveling, she has been subjected to harsh palace rules and regulations day by day, and Yushi has no intention at all. She only wants to have enough food, and everyone around her asks her to do whatever she wants. When she heard that Xianjiku couldn't eat enough, she was reluctant to go. However, where to go was not up to her to decide, and it had to be determined whether it met the preferences of her aunts. As these people came and went, there were fewer and fewer people around Yushi. However, no one wanted to take her away. Yushi was anxious, but it was of no use. She could only wait and bask in the sun for a while longer. Which other master in the 6 palaces of the East and West hasn't shown up with the people in front of him? Taking advantage of the fact that the steward's aunt was whispering together and not paying attention to these little girls, Yushi slightly collapsed and let out a long sigh of relief. In this deep palace, she was cautious and restrained every step, even her breath was suppressed. She didn't know how long she could survive on her own. She really wanted to close her eyes and kick her legs who knew she hadn't completely given up on herself yet, and when she heard a sound of whoosh from Pokong, followed by a pain in her back, Yushi gritted her teeth and let out a muffled groan. Her body just trembled and she habitually stood firm, holding her shoulders and pressing her head, maintaining the kind of obedience that a servant should have. She was just harshly whipped by a bamboo whip, and she had long been accustomed to this kind of punishment. However, there was a lot of pain in the area where it should have hurt. Today, Aunt Chen, who was in charge of punishment, slapped her hard and even scratched the tender skin behind her ear for a moment. Do you still want to climb up the high branch? I tell you, there's still a long way to go in the palace. How can you serve your master even if you can't bear this kind of punishment? Without your master's life, you have developed a whole body of false emotions. Aunt Chen sternly reprimanded, saying that none of the servants here were afraid of being beaten by Aunt Chen. They couldn't help but tremble at every word and sentence, as their intentions were not as deadly as those of this one. But who knew that everyone didn't wait for a lengthy reprimand? Before Aunt Chen could finish speaking, her tone changed, like a chicken being choked on its neck, and her tone became extremely ridiculous. I would like to pay my respects to Mama. Mama is very auspicious. On this hot day, you only need a little servant to let me know. I will take someone over and let you choose. Are you tired and hot from coming all this way? Spring flowers. Prepare tea snacks. Not only did Aunt Chen flatter her so much, but Aunt Wang and Aunt Li beside her were also equally capable. They served tea, poured water, pinched their shoulders, and fanned the old lady like little maids, which really made people curious about her identity. On weekdays, these three aunts are all eye-catching. How could they have been so afraid to respect such a grandmother? For a moment, the little girls at the beginning had different thoughts and looked at each other secretly. Yushi was no exception, holding her heart and supporting her ears, listening attentively to the conversations of her aunts. It's not a big deal to hear this. It turned out that the people around the Empress Dowager and her elderly family had arrived. Despite the pain in her upper back, Yushi's heart was so excited that it almost jumped out of her throat. She immediately straightened her waist. Now is not the time to comply. To live a good life, one must hold on to the thickest leg in the palace. The person who came was Su Malagu. Although she was a servant personally served by the Empress Dowager, due to her deep experience and having served as the mentor of Emperor Kangxi, anyone who dared to disrespect her would be disrespectful to the Empress Dowager and Emperor Kangxi. However, Su Malagu was completely unassuming, with half-white hair, a slightly chubby round face, and a hint of a smile on her lips, which truly gave off a sense of familiarity. It's not that expensive, and I've come to relax. Previously, there was a little girl in front of my mother who had poor fortune and fell ill in the winter. A few days ago, she couldn't survive. My mother is very emotional and has been feeling sad for several days. It's only then that I thought about coming over and choosing one, regardless of her abilities, to please her. This is like coming to the market to pick a cute little dog, but when asked who is not interested, who doesn't want to be valued by the Empress Dowager. If I could serve this master, it would really be a blessing in life. As Su Malagu spoke to her aunts, she looked at the few remaining maids in front of her. As she raised her eyes, she saw a suitable one standing in front of her. The small one stood the straightest, with clear eyebrows and eyes, and was a spirited and energetic child. Although she had lost some weight, she probably wouldn't be so sickly that it would always make the mother sad. Su Malagu raised her hand and pointed, "Just you, what's your name? Which family? How old is it?" Yushi suppressed the ecstasy in her heart and calmly bowed to Su Malagu, saying, "As for my lord, my servant's name is Yushi, the Waya family, and I am 15 years old." After a moment of careful consideration, Su Malagu didn't expect an adult surnamed Wuya to have a good face in front of Emperor Kangxi. Such a child has no foundation, no ambition, and is born in a meticulous and charming manner, which can be a pain for the mother. "Alright, get up quickly. The Empress is still waiting for us. Like you, I also serve the Empress and cannot be called the master. Just call me Grandma. Yushi quickly got up and slightly bent her knees to call for her to go. No matter how nervous and excited she was in her heart, she didn't show any signs on her face, afraid that she might be picked out by her mother for something wrong. If she didn't want her again, she wouldn't want to stay here and suffer from labor. Su Malagu nodded to herself and thought to herself that Yushi had good rules. Just follow Chingu in and have a cup of tea, which is also a way for Yushi to tidy up for a moment and a half. Then she led her people to live with the master. Yushi hurriedly returned to Datong's shop, and only then did she shed tears. Firstly, she felt that she had finally escaped from the sea of suffering, and secondly, she felt a moment of sadness for herself. Back in the day, she was also a precious child in the family, pampered. She came here inexplicably to experience endless suffering. Even though it was not long before Yushi came to the Qing dynasty, her heart was still very unhappy. However, I couldn't go back anymore, so I had to look forward. Yushi has always been a strong person. After tidying up, she wiped away her tears and warned herself to work hard and strive for what she wanted, and never blame herself. After a long delay, the new book finally meets everyone. Request tickets and collect them. Omega, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Heavenly Blessings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Heavenly Blessings. Sister, I have a bright future ahead of me. Don't forget my sister. My sister's fate is not good, and my aunt even sent me to the Zinzheku by name. I finally got out of the Zinzheku and now I'm back. I'm afraid I won't be able to leave the Zinzheku in my lifetime. Just as Yugue calmed down a bit, he saw Wei Shuang fall into the door and hold her in tears. This Wei Shuang was a small selection from the same group as her. They lived in a room with about 10 little girls, and they didn't know what kind of scheming they were up to every day, but she and Wei Shuang were relatively close. Wei Shuang's ama used to be the steward of the Zinzheku, but now Wei Shuang has returned to work as an attendant, and according to Yu Jian's opinion, it is also considered a beautiful thing, at least with some family members to protect it. It's hard to say any extra words. Su Malagu is still waiting for her, so Yushi just comforted her a few words and said that she won't forget her younger sister. If she gets better in the future, she will definitely find ways to help her, and Wei Shuangshang will look better now. As she left the door, the corners of her eyes were still slightly red, but there was no longer much sadness or self-blame on her face. When she saw Su Mala's aunt sweetly calling out to her mother, she helped her old man get up and go out. Anyone who passed by the door would gently remind her to be careful, not to say much, but to be considerate in every detail. Su Malagu, who is so clever and discerning, wouldn't dislike it. She couldn't help but pick up some to avoid colliding with the master. I picked you back specifically to accompany the Empress Dowager, talking, reading, having tea, and going to bed. You need to pay attention to these things. In the first few days, you should watch more and do less, and be diligent when you become familiar with them. Even if you are idle, you don't have to do the sweeping work, so as not to make it difficult to approach the master with a disheveled face. On weekdays, Wan Suiyi, several princes, and brothers often come, and these masters have dedicated personnel to serve them. You don't need to have any eyes. The Empress is easy to serve and treats us well as servants. You have to have an Empress in your heart, and you can only have one, remember. Samalagu spoke with a bit more dignity, which was a striking. How could Yushi not understand? Samalagu was afraid that the Empress Dowager would come with the other gentlemen in front of her frequently, and she had something wrong with it. Please rest assured, Auntie. I will definitely not dare to serve the Empress Dowager. It is a great blessing for me to serve the Empress Dowager, and I dare not think about anything else. Auntie Su Mala smiled and nodded at Yushi, always suspecting that people were not needed, and just watching the little girl behave. There was nothing to say all the way, and Yushi just lowered her head to follow Su Malagu. The journey was very long, and after staying there, Yushi felt a bit overwhelmed with excitement. It was a hot day and she hadn't dripped water yet. As Yushi walked, she felt dizzy in front of her. She pinched her own palm hard, which made her much more conscious. It's time to meet my master, it's about where I will go in the next 10 years. I can't go wrong at this moment. Yu warned herself, holding her heart tightly, and finally I have reached the right place. Upon entering the Cining Palace, there was a refreshing coolness, and Yushi's spirit was slightly uplifted. After Su Malagu had passed on the message, she entered the palace in a proper manner and gave another big gift to her master. I have seen the Empress Dowager's mother, the maid Yushi, who is auspicious. Get up quickly and come and call the AI family to take a look. Let's see what kind of person Su Malagu has found for the AI family, who has been away for so long. The Empress Dowager joked, and Su Malagu showed no signs of restraint. She also joked, I've only been away for half an hour. Why is the master so clingy? Huan Mama is becoming more and more clingy to her aunt, and it's not even possible for her grandson to be with her. Ma Ma will ask later, where is my Su Ma La aunt? It shows that aunt is Huan Ma Ma Ma's favorite in her heart. After Su Ma La Gu joked, a male voice came from behind, laughing heartily, causing the Empress Dowager to smile and talk about the things she wanted to beat. The servants in the hall also smiled slightly, which was really lively. Yushi lowered her head and stood up, not knowing who the man was. She never dared to look up from beginning to end, her eyes only watching people act with sharp feet. If it weren't for that person making a noise, she wouldn't have known that there was a master nearby. Listening to this intimate tone, she also called Huang Mama, so she thought it was some kind of prince. With a casual glance in his eyes, he could see a patch of yellow embroidered cloud patterns on the hem. It was Emperor Kangxi who was leaning on the nearby noble concubine's bed without any image. This master is quite promiscuous and unrestrained. If we set aside the majesty highlighted by his dragon robe, it would be like a playboy from that family spending his leisure time here. How could Yushi have seen such a great figure before? She was already nervous about meeting the Empress Dowager. Who knows, there is still a powerful figure here. If she makes a mistake, she might be killed. Yushi knelt quietly, trying her best to reduce her own presence, waiting for the masters to laugh enough before seeing her again. The Empress Dowager didn't joke with anyone for too long, she just stopped and took a light sip from the teacup. She immediately calmed down, indicating that she was a strict master. Get up quickly and come over to call the AI family to take a look. Is it called Yushi? What are the two characters? Can you write? As soon as the Empress Dowager finished speaking, there were palace maids waiting beside her to write. Yugue stood up in a proper manner to answer the simple question, but she dared not answer it casually. The sisters and aunts who were serving around were all dignified, and I also think that in history, this master has served 2 emperors in 3 dynasties and is a woman with great abilities. She would never like someone who is submissive. Furthermore, when Su Ma La Gu came to pick someone, she clearly said she wanted someone who could talk and read with the Empress, so now she needs to show some skills and not hide herself. Thanks to not reading in vain in her previous life, Yushi thought for a moment and then had a clear idea. If I were to return to my mother, the 2 characters Ruo Ru Yu and Luo Luo Ru Shi would be taken here. After speaking, Yushi stepped forward to apologize and wrote these 2 words with wolf hair. They were written in regular script, neither showing off their skills nor being mediocre. The Empress Dowager nodded repeatedly, but her eyes did not pay much attention to the words. Instead, she kept looking at Yushi's face. Yushi never dared to look directly at the Empress Dowager. This time, she didn't pay attention to people's gaze, but was still slightly nervous. The Empress Dowager hadn't made any evaluation yet, but the words "she" were taken away by Emperor Kangxi. With a click, it made people feel uneasy. It's true that one cannot judge by appearance. I haven't chosen a little girl like you who is good at calligraphy yet. I'm afraid she won't be able to write it without 7 or 8 years of experience. The meaning of her name is also good. Yushi is a rare and beautiful jade. It seems that you, Ama, are open-minded and talented. Upon hearing Kangxi's words, Yushi suddenly grew 2 heads in size. She just wanted to quickly pass it off and didn't want to talk to Kangxi. Moreover, this person can't open any pot and pick up any pot. It's okay to praise her, but why do you still put gold on her cheap alma noodles? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Sudden fainting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Sudden fainting. She has been in the Qing dynasty for so many years, and the most annoying thing is her lazy Ama. If possible, she wouldn't even want to take on her Ama surname, so she couldn't help but explain more. I saw Yushi bowing to Kangxi again and saying, as for Wan Suiyi, this name was given to me by my servant, Ernyang. Ernyang has read several books and can write, but my servant family is poor and there are many brothers and sisters. There is no money in the family for the children to study, so Ernyang serves as a teacher, teaching them word by word. Kangxi was surprised. He was always quick-witted, and couldn't help but hear the faint displeasure in the tone of this little girl. Although he didn't know that Yushi emphasized her forehead in this meeting, this dissatisfaction was mostly aimed at her, Ama. But he is the supreme figure of 95, who dares to show any emotion in front of him. This little girl is quite bold. Kangxi suddenly developed an interest in Yushi. Since his Yuan dynasty left last year, his life has become much bleak. He seems to be too young to be enthusiastic about anything. Today, he finally encountered something interesting, and he didn't have any intention of getting angry. There was no need to make a fuss about a little girl, instead he chuckled lightly. That makes me narrow-minded. Seeing these words, it startled Yushi into a cold sweat. She defended herself by saying that she was too talkative, but she never intended for Emperor Kangxi to appease her, let alone for a narrow-minded remark. She felt unhappy when she called Kangxi Yi. How could Kangxi Yi give her any good fruit to eat? She was afraid he wouldn't even see the sun tomorrow. Yushi wanted to cry without tears, so she had to quickly bow again and apologize to this deadly person. I dare not, I know my sin. Looking at Yushi's trembling expression, before Emperor Kangxi could say anything, the Empress Dowager opened her mouth and said, "What are you doing to scare people? It's hard to find such a good girl. If you scare people away, let's see how you compensate me." Emperor Kangxi was overjoyed. Even though he was so tall, he still played coquettish with Huang Mama and said pleasing words to make people happy. The scene suddenly became lively again. Yushi breathed a sigh of relief, but now the masters were all chatting and laughing, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and no one called her flat. She could only kneel and wait obediently. I didn't wait too long. After joking for a while, Emperor Kangxi stood up and wanted to leave. He said that he would have to meet a few imperial lords in a while. The Empress Dowager didn't leave anyone, so just asked him to work hard. Just as he was about to leave, Emperor Kangxi saw a jade spear and called out. However, before the little girl could finish her words of gratitude, she stumbled into the ground with a loud thud and fell in front of Emperor Kangxi's toes, scaring him half a step back. How could this well-behaved person fall? Someone, call the imperial physician. The Empress Dowager was so nervous that a little girl was too nervous. She not only called for the imperial physician, but also asked someone to lift Yushi to the side of the noble concubine's bed. It was originally unlucky to drag her out and live on her own. But now that the Empress Dowager has spoken, no one dares to question or say more, and she is busy following orders. The person who fainted was heavy and lifeless, and the palace maids who were closely served by the Empress Dowager were not doing heavy work. 3 or 4 palace maids worked together to lift it, only a few steps away, and in the middle, they even threw the jade spear. The Empress Dowager's back was not good looking, and the little girls below naturally trembled with fear. Now they had even less strength in their hands. In the end, Emperor Kangxi couldn't bear to watch and was even more puzzled by Emperor Mama's admiration for Yushi. He didn't reject this little girl in his heart, so he stepped forward to help and humbly lifted Yushi from his waist. This little girl is not heavy, but rather incredibly light. At the age of 14 or 15, Kangxi felt that she was not as solid as his 3-year-old elder brother. When such a thing happened, Kangxi didn't rush to leave. He just stayed with Huang Ma and waited for the imperial physician to come. After asking, everyone knew that Yushi had suffered a lot. If he couldn't eat enough every day, it would be enough. There were still many fine whips and pinching marks on his body, so there was no need to ask. It must have been taught by his aunts. The Empress Dowager has always been lenient. In earlier years, the servants who had lowered their heads were not allowed to engage in lynching. Who would have thought that the servants who lowered their heads would have gone against their will? If it weren't for Yushi falling in front of them, the servants who lowered their heads would have been stirring up trouble for a long time. The Empress Dowager was swift and resolute, and immediately ordered the severe punishment of several maids in charge. She also instructed others to follow the example and deal with a group of people. Such actions startled the Empress Dowager and the Empress Dowager Nyohulu, who was currently in charge of the affairs of the 6 palaces. However, these two people, one who doesn't care about things on weekdays and the other who is sick, even if they come, it won't be of much use. The Empress Dowager only thinks that there are many people making a fuss, so she just sends people back, and even Emperor Kangxi won't let anyone stay. If there were so many unnecessary words, it would be difficult to ask again. Emperor Kangxi had to bid farewell first, and the Empress Dowager and Empress Dowager also stepped down one by one to secretly inquire about the news of the Cining Palace. After everything in the palace had calmed down, the Empress Dowager sent away the maids and women in the room, leaving only Su Malagu on the side. The master and servant sat in front of Yugui without speaking. After a while, Su Malagu let out a soft sigh and patted the Empress Dowager's hand to gently comfort her. "Madam, don't always be sad about past events. If Princess Duanxian is alive in heaven, I don't want you to be sad even after so many years." Yes, the Empress Dowager's excessive protection of Yu Xian didn't really like her, but she could see the shadow of Duanxian Princess from Yu Xian's body, especially her smart eyes and unyielding spirit, which were just the same as Duanxian Princess. Princess Duanxian married to Mongolia at the age of 13 and passed away at the age of 15. Although it has been many years since then, when she dreams back, the Empress Dowager will cry and wet her soft pillow, grieving for her daughter who passed away early. If it weren't for Yushi refuting Kangxi and showing some agility, the master and servant hadn't even remembered to offer the princess. If they had reacted earlier, Su Malagu would definitely not have brought Yushi back, as it would have caused the Empress to feel sad. At first glance, she only felt that Yu had a kind face, and now she knows where that kind face is. The Empress Dowager raised her hand and gently caressed Yushi's face, even her breath trembling. It seemed like she had not heard what Su Malagu said, only immersed in endless longing. After a while, she choked up. Back then, when Duanxian returned, he was also so thin. They said Duanxian died of illness, but my Duanxian was so healthy that he had never suffered any serious illness since childhood. He must have received such inhumane treatment before leaving. It was because I didn't take good care of Duanxian. No matter how strong she was outside, the Empress Dowager couldn't hold back her emotions the most when it came to offering gifts. Seeing this child who was similar to her daughter now, she felt that her daughter had suffered again and others wanted her, so she sent her back to her side. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Princess Titles. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Princess Titles. How could this be your fault? If you want to blame me, I'll blame you. Princess Duanxian wanted me to marry her back then, but I didn't want you, so I didn't follow her. If I had gone to serve the princess, I don't think the princess would have ended up like this. If we talk about the missing of Princess Duanxian, Aunt Samala is no less than the Empress Dowager's Empress Dowager's Empress Dowager's Empress Dowager's Empress Dowager's Empress Dowager. She has been accompanying her since she was young. She is a master servant, a close friend and a sister's. She also took her life to protect the children of the Empress Dowager. Princess Duanxian died early, and she is also in great grief. However, for the sake of the Empress Dowager's health, how could she cry along with her again? She could only pretend to be strong and coax her, but a few words had little effect. The intensity of grief was only enough, and the Empress Dowager couldn't stop crying. After an unknown amount of time, the Empress Dowager suddenly felt her fingers being held by a warm little hand. She raised her eyebrows and looked directly into Yuki's eyes. "Madam, I have no intention of prying into your conversation with my mother, but I really can't bear to hear you feel sad. My humble identity cannot be compared to Princess Duanxian. However, today I am also grateful to you for being good with the princess, and I have finally regained my life. If you don't mind, the maidservants will serve you every day to get up, sleep, change clothes, eat, and read to relieve your stress. They don't seek your liking, but only hope to show more filial piety to you on behalf of the princess. I also ask the empress to fulfill it." Yushi's words had their own tricks in hand, using the princess's name to fight for a few points to use. However, she really pitied this old lady. Just for today's Empress Dowager to call the imperial physician to save her, she also needs to know how to be grateful and repay her sincerity. If placed in ordinary times, anyone who dares to use the name of Duan Xian to say anything about filial piety, the Empress Dowager will definitely take her life. At this moment, she was lost in thought of her daughter, feeling fragile in her heart. It seemed like a daughter had appeared after receiving the words from Yushi, sending a similar child to comfort her. In addition, Yushi's eyes were clear and without any calculation. The Empress Dowager had no reason to refuse, and immediately nodded with tears in her eyes. "Good child, take good care of yourself. Not to mention how to take care of the AI family, you can be a little happy to look at the AI family well." Yushi nodded tightly, feeling the gentle care of the mother caressing her cheeks. Yushi couldn't help but have a sour nose, and in the blink of an eye, she couldn't help but shed a string of tears. Since her arrival in the Qing dynasty, this is the first time she has received such pity from someone, even if it was through her facing others. Unexpectedly inserting willows and willows into the shade, these just right tears made the Empress Dowager firmly believe that it was her daughter who had a spirit in heaven, and entrusted Yugue to come to her side. Yushi was not seriously ill, but was starving and tired. She only rested for half a day and then had a full meal before coming back to life. At night, Yushi waited on the Empress Dowager to change her clothes and go to bed, and even read a book for a while. Accompanied by Auntie Su Mala, seeing that the Empress Dowager had been resting so steadily for some days, she felt a little relieved of Yushi and only hoped that people would not indulge in it. "Go ahead and share a room with Yuju. Coincidentally, you both follow Yuju's name and will serve the Empress in reading and speaking together in the future. If I am not here, you will all listen to Aunt Hua. She is also an elderly person in front of the Empress, and you will gradually become familiar with the people around her. There are many palace maids around the same size as you here. As soon as you arrive, you are a first-class palace maid close to the Empress. In addition, the Empress's special concern for you may make others somewhat dissatisfied. If there are trivial matters, it is inevitable that they will not look good in front of the master. If the problem is serious, the master may not always be towards you. I see you are a smart person who can judge the situation. You don't need me to teach you how to be a good person. If you really have difficulties, come find me again." After the master had rested, Sumalagu finally familiarized herself with the various parts of the Cining Palace with Yushi. She also gave Yushi 3 new clothes, all of which were fresh and tender colors. The material was more imposing than the young master below. After familiarizing herself with it, she should also pay attention to it, so as not to let the little girl feel that the sky is too high and thick, which would also add to people's troubles. Sumalagu doesn't quite agree with the importance placed on a not-so-simple little girl, but she can't resist being liked by the Empress. Yushi could naturally hear Sumalagu's faint warning in her words, but she was not dissatisfied with Sumalagu, only grateful. If it weren't for Sumalagu bringing her to the Empress, she wouldn't know where to suffer. Haha. Mother, rest assured that I am not an unsatisfied person, and some of my intentions are not deliberate. It is true that I want to seek the protection of the Empress, but I am truly grateful that she wants to be kind to her. If you want to listen well, I won't say much. You just need to see how I do it. Yushi's magnanimity was beyond Sumalagu's expectations. It was the first time she had seen someone who had half of her neck buried in the ground say anything and was not annoying. For a while, her defense against Yushi had also decreased significantly, but it didn't seem obvious on the surface, so she just responded. Then I need to take a good look. After speaking, Auntie Su Mala went back to rest, and Yufu stood still, watching the grandmother walk away. She then returned to her room, where Yuju, who was with her, was already there, accompanied by a stranger. Without worrying about slowly tidying up her delicate clothes, Yushi hurriedly dealt with the two people in front of her, regardless of their age or size. When she spoke, she called for her sister and even brought the box of jewelry that Su Malagu had just given her to someone to choose from. Although they are all silk flowers commonly worn by palace maids, no one lacks them. Their left and right attitudes need to be given enough. If they want to live a peaceful life in the future, they must curry favor now. I'm new here and I'm also struggling. If I don't mind, my two sisters will have to pick the ones in this box and rely on their support in the future. Sister, there's no need to be so polite. Just put these things away. When we work in front of the Empress, we always receive better treatment and dress appropriately. You fainted today, which scared everyone a lot. Do you feel better now? Yuzhu and Nanshuang quickly refused, feeling a bit dissatisfied that Yushi would sit on an equal footing with them as soon as she arrived. This would show Yushi's full politeness and obedience to the rules, and her small face was also weak and pitiful, reducing her displeasure. After all, he is not very old and not inherently bad. The faint hostility comes and goes quickly. In a few words, the relationship feels a bit closer. Yushi quickly thanked Yuzhu for her concern, exchanged pleasantries for a while, and then asked the servant in front of the Empress what kind of people there were. She wanted to know more about them first, so that she wouldn't have to be on duty for the first time. If she were too busy, offending others wouldn't be good. Three little girls sat cross-legged on the couch, with melon seed tea on a low table in the middle, and their conversation was quite casual. The servant in front of me, madam, can say more or less. You should be familiar with the few people we serve closely. Besides me and Nan Shuang, there are also two others. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Eye contact. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Eye contact. A person named Chunbai is taller and older than us. If either Mama or Aunt Hua is feeling unwell on weekdays, it's Chunbai who takes care of us more. Chunbai has always taken care of us and is easy to talk to. However, the other sister Manzhuang is not as easy to talk to. She needs to give advice to everyone, but when the Empress praised her for having the best rules earlier, it became even more severe. No one can control her anymore. The person who said this was Nan Shuang. Nan Shuang and Man Shuang were all girls who followed Shuang's character, naturally living in the same room. However, Nan Shuang couldn't stand Man Shuang's criticism everywhere, and her qualifications were not as good as others. So she had to come to Yuzhu every day to pass the time and go back when it was time to go to bed, so as not to hear anyone nag. In response to the various evaluations of the two towards the Cining Palace, Yushi only believed half of them. Each person had their own impression. If Manzhuang were to evaluate Nanshuang, it would be a different story. Three little girls gathered together and talked endlessly. This delay caused Yushi to have no time to even comb and wash, so she had to blow out the lights. She had no choice but to take a basin of water under the dim moonlight and wipe some casually. Yuzhu slept on a narrow bed next to the west wall. Although it looked a bit rudimentary, Yuzhu was already satisfied. Yuzhu slept peacefully, unlike before when a dozen or so people shared a large bunk. They woke up late at night, grinding their teeth and squeezing together, feeling hot. They didn't know how many times they would wake up in a night. The mind was full of confused thoughts. Yushuan soon fell asleep and had no dreams all night. She even got up half an hour earlier than Yuzhu. She got up and cleaned up quietly, prepared water for Yuzhu, choked on the dim sum left yesterday, and went to the main hall to wait for work. Not long after, Su Malagu, Hua Gu, and the servants of all sizes in the Cining Palace arrived almost at the same time. Hua Gu first gave a lecture, and then asked someone to do a job. Today, Yu Gui was quite familiar with it, but there wasn't much work to do. With so much free time, he still felt a bit uncomfortable, and sighed that he was a hard-working person who couldn't enjoy leisure. After 2 or 3 days of idle time and getting familiar with various places, Yushi officially followed the Empress Dowager to serve her. Today is the 15th day, and all the empresses in the harem came to Cining Palace to pay their respects. Kangxi and his elder brothers took a step first, and there were only 3 small children in total. The eldest brother Baoqing was already 3.5 years old and walked very quickly. Kangxi asked the children to follow him alone. Urgage and Crown Prince Baoqing were going to be over a year old, which was a fun time. Kangxi was reluctant to let his grandmother hold him, so he decided to take one by one. The gentleman just came over like this. There is also a young man who has not yet arranged his teeth, but he is only about to reach his full moon and is not suitable to bring out. Therefore, his grandmother will come to greet him on his behalf. My grandson pays his respects to Huan Mama. Huan Mama is auspicious, and Mama Ma is auspicious. Although Ah Gu and the princesses are young, none of the children in the palace are not precocious. They will learn from each other and bow to their ancestors, saying, Yukuma is auspicious. As she watched the 3 small buns of children bowing to her, the Empress Dowager was heartbroken and unwilling to let the children touch the ground. She quickly asked Su Mala Gu and Hua Gu to bring the children over, scanning the servants brought by Emperor Kangxi with her eyes and scolding him with some resentment. Why don't you ask the children to sit in the sedan chair on such a hot day? How can the children compare to you, who has thick skin and flesh? Even if you don't have enough slaves, can you still give birth to 3 heads and 6 arms to help you serve the children with just 1 liang jiugong? As she spoke, the Empress Dowager also sent Yushi and a few others to prepare honey tea and fan for the children. It's not surprising that she doted on these children so much. Kangxi had a difficult time inheriting, and there were 4 little brothers and a small grid in front of the eldest brother, but none of them stood still. It's really sad to say that such a good child would disappear. Emperor Kangxi smiled and apologized repeatedly. He was not so reckless on weekdays. Today, when he went to pick up the children from Ah Gu, he saw that they were all healthy and lively, and he was also happy. It was rare for him to get close to the children, so he became a bit reckless. We can't always protect them too much. If we all spoil and grow up, how can we still wield knives and swords to protect our Qing dynasty in the future? Emperor Kangxi stroked the hair of the crown prince in front of him. It was rare for him to say such a solemn sentence, which actually attracted the nearby Yushi to take a few more glances. If you're not lazy and joking, Kangxi's imposing demeanor would be quite impressive. When I didn't wear it before, I heard that Emperor Kangxi had acne and left marks when he was a child. He had a pockmarked face, but upon closer inspection of the real person, I don't think it's exaggerated. There were only a few shallow marks on his cheeks, as if he had acne before. However, Emperor Kangxi's magnanimity, imposing demeanor, and good physique make people overlook the scattered flaws on his face. Without waiting for Yushi to retract his inquisitive gaze, who would have thought Kangxi was so keen? His gaze immediately turned towards him, causing Yushi to panic and lower his head like a thief. His gaze drifted and he dared not look back. Kangxi didn't get angry at such an disrespectful little girl, but he found her reaction interesting. After much thought, she looked like a little rabbit raised by urgage, extremely timid and curious. What are you thinking? Ai Jia scolded you, you're so angry that you don't even want to say anything back. The Empress Dowager held the crown prince in one hand and twisted an almond from a plate with the other hand, placing it on the back of Emperor Kangxi's hand to distract his thoughts. Kangxi's hand trembled, and he finally regained his senses. He rarely had such moments of lack of concentration, so he had to quickly find an excuse to say, "Grandson, how can you be angry? I've been thinking about things 3 times these days, and I've been tossing and turning at night. As soon as I arrived at Mama's place, I relaxed a bit and felt a bit sleepy for a while." Upon hearing these words, the Empress Dowager immediately reduced her anger towards Emperor Kangxi and felt sorry for him. She also sent Chunbai to the pantry to bring a bowl of nourishing chicken soup. Emperor Kangxi worked so hard at a young age, and if he lost money, his health would not be good. National affairs are not your own business. The civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty asked you to support yourself and not be able to do it for free. The previous court brainstormed and discussed the 3 times affairs as soon as they could be discussed, and if not, fought. Why bother you so much? The Empress Dowager is a swift and decisive person. She has been in the harem for many years and has never been burdened by external affairs. Emperor Kangxi was raised by the Empress Dowager herself, and her natural temperament also followed her. However, she is still young and has always been meticulous in her decision-making. In addition, the current situation is not very clear, so she is not in a hurry to make a decision. Emperor Kangxi raised his hand to dismiss some second-class servants in the room, and then he spoke in detail. Fighting is meant to be fought, but when, how, and to what extent it should be fought cannot be done arbitrarily. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. San Francisco War. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. San Francisco War. Huan Mama also knows that our Qing dynasty will remain stable for only a few years, and it is a time of great waste waiting to be revived. If we rashly send troops, even if we win, we will lose. Moreover, our grandson has the intention to personally go to war. Even if we don't discuss this matter with a few imperial lords, we will still discuss it with you. Upon hearing this, the Empress Dowager was very anxious. Kangxi Yi was protecting her eldest child in her heart. When she thought about the battlefield, there were no weapons or knives, and the Empress Dowager refused to ask Kangxi Yi to lead troops to personally conquer the 3 domains. Wu Sangui is not someone with 3 heads and 6 arms. Why do you have to personally arrest him with such a face? There are many powerful soldiers and generals available in the court, and not to mention far away, Fu Dali is an extremely appropriate person. Fu Dali is the Haha Pearl of Xuanzhiyi, a very loyal and devoted person. Xuanzhiyi passed away, and he insisted on following him to death. Later, he was stopped by the Empress Dowager and advised kindly for 2 years. It was only then that he overcame the obstacle in his heart and let go of his own life. Nowadays, he is also a loyal servant of Emperor Kangxi. When he first apprehended Aobai, this person contributed greatly. Not only did the Empress Dowager value this person, but Emperor Kangxi also valued him. But when Fu Dali was mentioned, Emperor Kangxi just smiled bitterly and said, "Does Huanma think his grandson hasn't thought about him?" In mid-June, his grandson sent Fu Dali and Zircon to the land of Yungui with the intention of persuading Wu Sangui. It has been almost 2 months, but there has been no news at all. 2 days ago, Governor General of Yunnan and Guizhou, Gan Wenkuan, arrived in Beijing on the pretext of burying his mother. This brought news about the 2 of them. They had a difficult conversation with Wu Sangui, and Lord Zhurkin's head on his neck had been hanging on the city wall for more than half a month. Lord Fu has no news at the moment, but it is likely that the situation will be more ominous. Upon hearing this news, the Empress Dowager suddenly covered her lips and did not believe that Wu Sangui had been rampant to this extent, nor did she believe that such a good 2 adults had just died in vain. Speaking of which, Emperor Kangxi did not hide his intentions and had already prepared to persuade Empress Dowager. He reached out to Liang Jiogong and brought a payment note from the person, presenting it to the Empress Dowager with both hands. The Empress Dowager opened it and saw the 4 big characters, Anti-Qing Restoration of the Ming Dynasty, in cinnabar color on her head, almost fainting. Looking at the content again, it was Wu Sangui who incited the officials and people of Yunnan and Guizhou. Wu Sangui first wept and spoke of the ferocity of the Manchu people, rampant throughout the world, and bestowed upon himself the title of Ming Dynasty nobleman. He also found someone from somewhere to impersonate Ming Dynasty Prince Chu San, in order to borrow the wisdom of Kuang Fu Xi in June and borrow 100,000 barbarian soldiers to shout with the court. Not only that, Wu Sangui also openly announced the day of Crown Prince Zhu San's ascension, and on the New Year's Day of the following year, he would worship heaven and earth and ascend the great treasure in the capital. Isn't this arrogance just saying that Qing dynasty is vulnerable? Wu Sangue, the handsome barbarian teacher, can defeat Qing dynasty in just 3 or 4 months. Such a hypocritical act of deceiving the world and stealing his name, Wu Sangue actually has the face to post it up. What kind of name is entrusted to the orphan, borrowing the name of Prince Zhu San, and even rebelling against the Qing dynasty and restoring the Ming dynasty are just his fig leaf. It's just occupying the precious land we gave him, and now no one even knows his name. The Empress Dowager was extremely angry and slapped the table beside her fiercely. Even the tea bowl on the table trembled 3 times, and the girls below shrugged their shoulders, not knowing how much courage they had mustered to avoid kneeling down and bothering the Empress. Emperor Kangxi was much calmer. He quickly got up and stepped forward to give the Empress Dowager some peace of mind. If it weren't for his insistence on personally expediting, he wouldn't have angered the Empress Dowager with such a troublesome situation. Ma Mo was angry. Wu Sangue was just being stubborn and insincere. On the surface, he was submissive, claiming that everything was arranged by the court, but in reality, he acted against the emperor's will and secretly spread anti-Qing news. His children and grandchildren learned about these things earlier, and it's not urgent at the moment, just waiting for an opportunity. However, before this opportunity arrived, my grandson only hoped that Emperor Mama could handle this personal expedition. In order to consolidate the foundation of the court and the people, he came up with a way to govern Han with Han. Emperor Mama separated the 3 domains, and now I, as my son, will settle Emperor Mama's matter, which will also save the face of our heavenly family. Speaking of which, the Empress Dowager wouldn't refuse. Moreover, although Emperor Kangxi is only 21 years old at the moment, he ascended the throne from a young age. Even after the years when Aobai held the court, he has been a powerful emperor for 6 years. Making decisions no longer requires asking her, who is a grandmother. The Empress Dowager held Emperor Kangxi's hand and sighed repeatedly. After a while, she nodded and said, "At present, you are the most decisive in national affairs. You still have such courage. Huan Mama is not happy for you yet, she is only worried about your safety. How do you make a decision?" Emperor Mama has never asked. At the moment, I just want to know when you plan to lead troops and who you will bring. Don't blame Emperor Mama for being verbose. You can't fool around with this matter. Emperor Kangxi suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, afraid that Huan Mama would not allow him to go on a personal expedition. How could he be too verbose when facing Huan Mama's concerns, just answering in detail? If you are at ease, my grandson will just discuss with you first, and whether or not to go will be discussed. This war is constantly changing, and my grandson expects that if it really starts, it will also happen in January of the following year. For now, just send troops to guard against it, and my grandson may not really go to the battlefield. Furthermore, Wu Sangue and his group are not afraid. If the plan is appropriate, they don't need to leave the Forbidden City for their grandchildren. They just need to wait for the good news with peace of mind. After a few words of reassurance, the Empress Dowager was a little relieved. She wanted to ask several ministers of the Kangxi imperial court what they meant about the personal expedition. Who said that Big Brother Bao Qing had to put down the dim sum in his hands and get up, and immediately ran to the Kangxi imperial court and the Empress Dowager and knelt down in front of them. If there is really a war, I am willing to share the worries of Emperor Ama. My Lingyun is really powerful. I ride Lingyun and kneel down everywhere I go. Big Brother is only a little over 3 years old at the moment, and the baby fat on his face has not even faded away. There is also a piece of cake residue at the corner of his mouth. Who would have thought that this child with a milky voice could say such powerful words? Kangxi was taken aback for a moment, thinking it was taught by a nursing mother. He immediately flew a sharp glance towards the eldest brother's seat. However, he saw Yuzhen, who was fanning the eldest brother, with a bewildered expression on his face. It was then that he remembered that when he brought the eldest brother, he did not ask the nanny to follow him. His gaze followed softness and he picked up the kneeling eldest brother, leaving only surprise in his heart. How powerful! But the former Empress Ama even heard the leader say, "We Baoqing fell off the horse's back and cried for a while with our noses. We also need Ama to deal with your Lingyun and change to a nearby pony." The little child blushed and didn't admit such a shameful thing. My dear, I can't be considered crying either. It's just that the sand has blinded my eyes. Now that Ling Yun is obedient, I won't change to another pony. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Big Brother Affairs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Big Brother Affairs. I have learned how to dance swords, and my master praises me for my excellent martial arts skills. Who dares to cause trouble to Emperor Ama? I will take care of anyone. Although the eldest brother was very serious when he said these words, and everyone should not laugh, it was this innocent and serious attitude that made people think the eldest brother was extremely cute. Not to mention the Empress Dowager and the maids in the palace, even Emperor Kangxi couldn't help but laugh and let this fairy tale drive away the displeasure and gloom in his heart. The young prince and Urgage on the side also started to coax in a confused manner, stuttering as the elder brother said they were going to war. Even when everyone in the harem arrived, the faces of the Empress Dowager and Emperor Kangxi remained smiling. I would like to pay my respects to the Empress Dowager and to Lord Wansui. I don't know why the Empress Dowager and Lord Wansui are laughing. I heard them before I entered the palace. The Empress Dowager exempted everyone from giving her a ceremonial seat, and there were only 5 or 6 people who could come to pay their respects. Without deliberately setting rules, they all asked people to sit closer, making it more lively. The first one to speak is Empress Dowager Nyo Hulu. Since the passing of Empress Heshri last year, she has been the highest-ranking one in the imperial palace of Emperor Kangxi. She is also a first-class official in charge of supporting the government, and although she was previously implicated in the Aobai incident, her former glory cannot be erased. If Emperor Kangxi were to establish another queen, the British consort would undoubtedly be the best choice. She should be the most esteemed and dignified person, but her body has never been well behaved, and she is as weak as a piece of paper. At the moment when she was about to turn 17, it gave a sense of fading away. Even the finest silk and precious jewelry on her body only appeared piled up, giving off a touch of elegance like water, which was a pity to see. Today, Empress Dowager Ing made a rare visit. Seeing her pale face, the Empress Dowager couldn't bear to ask about her condition, so she just smiled and explained. Big Brother said he wants to go out to war on behalf of his Emperor Ama, and he wants to be the Bachelor of our Qing dynasty. It's said that 3 years old looks old. Our eldest brother is so brave at a young age, and he will definitely be strong in the future. Empress Ing smiled, as even if she wanted to reach out to hold the eldest brother in Kangxi's arms, she had not had a son or a half of a daughter in the palace for many years. Now, seeing anyone's child is full of joy. Emperor Kangxi did everything he could to pity Empress Ing, so he sent the eldest brother to Empress Ying's arms. However, the eldest brother ate too much and was afraid that Empress Ing would fall on the child again with thin arms and legs. He took some care of them and made people see that the two of them were a little closer. The people in the harem didn't feel any displeasure when they saw this. After all, Empress Ing couldn't sleep with her body. Even if she was close to Lord Kangxi, what would happen? The only person who couldn't conceal their nervousness was sitting on the bench leaning forward fiercely, with the handkerchief in her hand twisted out of shape, as if she could pounce at the first moment if Big Brother didn't do anything wrong. Needless to say, this is the birth mother of the eldest brother, Hui Guiren. Yushi stood on the side and carefully recognized the master present, so as not to collide with anyone. Hui Guiren looked around 20 years old, with big eyes and an oval face. Without careful trimming of her eyebrows, she showed a bit of heroism compared to others. Big Brother's eyebrows and eyes followed Hui Guiren's, and he probably grew up to have a handsome appearance. However, before Yushi could finish looking around, he heard Big Brother humming and saying, "It hurts. It hurts. I want Emma to hold me, I want Emma to hold me." The sound of pain made everyone present feel uneasy, especially Hui Guiren. No matter what the rules were, she rushed forward with just one swift step. "I have offended you. My eldest brother accidentally fell off a pony. Although it's not a big deal, there are inevitably bruises on the kneecap of this leg. I think it was touched. I just need to give my eldest brother a massage." Although this statement does not offend anyone, no word or sentence can say that Empress Dowager Ying does not know how to hold a child. The gesture of Lady Hui holding Big Brother cannot be delayed for a moment. It is not an exaggeration to say that she snatched Big Brother from Empress Dowager Ying's arms. Empress Ying awkwardly, panicked, and let go. She quickly looked up at the expressions of Wan Sui Yi and the Empress Dowager. Seeing that they were indeed slightly displeased, she even apologized for her health and quickly followed Hui Guiren to squat down and see Big Brother. "But I hit the injury on Big Brother's body. Should I call the imperial physician to take a look? If I get injured, I can't force the child to resist. The children in this palace are really too delicate, and there are countless ways to use offspring to frame people. Except for one or two who are truly lucky, the premature deaths of other children are somewhat tricky. Empress Ying usually stays in seclusion due to illness, her body is like this, and she doesn't have much heart to fight with others." She admits that she didn't offend the benefactor, and it was a last-minute decision to come to pay respects today. Embracing the eldest brother was even more impulsive, but unexpectedly, such a mistake occurred. Empress Ying's concern for the eldest brother was not yet finished, and she was so anxious that she couldn't help but feel dizzy in front of her. "Where does Ah Gu hurt? Let me show you." Hui Guiren is in a hurry about Big Brother. There's no need to worry about Princess Ying's words. Even when facing Big Brother, she almost thinks of herself as an yin yang. She's just a mere noblewoman, and in private, she can only get close to her own child. On the surface, she can't cross her identity and rules. Big Brother was about to cry, tears were swirling in his eyes. Hui Guiren also blushed and eagerly stroked Big Brother inch by inch from beginning to end. Fortunately, Big Brother was wearing thin clothes in the summer, and Hui Guiren rolled up Big Brother's sleeves and pants to carefully examine them, which was when he found a few red marks on the child's legs and belly. Emperor Kangxi and Empress Dowager Ying quickly leaned over to take a look. The marks were sharp and angular. Emperor Kangxi and Lady Hui coincidentally glanced at several decorative agate beads on Empress Dowager Ying's flag skirt, and then they finally understood. Empress Dowager Ying was clearly aware of this, and with a white face, she hurriedly turned to Emperor Kangxi and said, "It's all my concubine. When I was holding my eldest brother, I forgot that the clothes on my body didn't fit. I won't be so careless again in the future. I still ask Lord Wansui to punish me. It was not intentional by anyone." Emperor Kangxi didn't have to take this matter into consideration and started attacking Empress Ying. At most, just a few words. Hui Guiren understood very well that although she didn't want anyone to harm her son at all, she couldn't make any fuss on the surface. Before Emperor Kangxi could even speak, Hui Guiren also hugged Big Brother and headed towards Emperor Kangxi and Empress Dowager Fu, offering words of comfort as soon as he spoke. Empress doesn't need to be so self-blaming, it's also because Big Brother can't hold back his tears. She's a little surprised. Empress has always loved Big Brother the most and is close to her. It's just a small matter, so Empress doesn't have to worry about it. Taking care of children is indeed a difficult task, not to mention you, madam. Even my concubine is constantly flustered when she sees Big Brother. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Extreme Mishandling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Extreme mishandling. No, it's just because Big Brother doesn't get along well with the Empress. If we see each other frequently, the Empress won't forget to pay attention to such small matters. As this matter was about to pass, who would say that anyone who watched the excitement didn't mind the matter? He added this sentence, and Hui Gui gritted his teeth secretly. Even if he didn't look, he knew who the speaker was. Who else could there be, just a noble person on equal footing with her? It is said to be on an equal footing, but because Rong Guiren is 1 or 2 years older than her, she has been serving Wan Suiyi for some more time, and she gave birth to Wan Suiyi's first son Qing Rui in front of Empress Hesheri. Even if Qing Rui died young, in Wan Suiyi's heart, Rong Guiren is always a bit higher than others. Pian Ronggui repeatedly gave birth to a child, and the child passed away one by one. In the end, Hui Guiren's child became the eldest brother of Wan Suiyi. Hui Guiren knew that Ronggui was dissatisfied with her, but she never expected Ronggui to have ulterior motives. I just gave birth to an elder brother, and I thought I was qualified to get married, but I dared to plan against her and her son. Dare to persuade Empress Ing to take away her child, why not first see if her own child is well protected in her arms? Don't be a lucky person again, you can't even turn 1 year old. Hui Gui was extremely angry in his heart, but his face remained expressionless, with a usually gentle smile. Sister Rong's words are very kind. Empress loves Ah Go and Go Go so much that they should also show filial piety to Empress. Big brother is a big brother and should be a good leader. At this time next year, I think Changxing brother will also be able to walk and talk. At that time, the brothers will take me to the Empress's place, and a few small children will stand in line with the handlebars, saying auspicious words to the Empress. I don't know how cute it is. Both you and I have sons, and no one can raise them on their own. They should be sent to Empress Ingfei to pick them up and see who she can take care of. Big brother has already remembered the story, even if it is truly recorded in his name, he knows who her own daughter is and who she should be close to, but Changxing brother is different. Changxing brother is only about to reach his full moon now, and his eyes have only opened for a few days. He knows who raised him and who he is close to. Don't steal the chicken, it won't erode the rice. Instead, you'll throw your own flesh into it. Huigairen smiled on his face, but when he turned his head to look at Ronggairen, his eyes were extremely cold. The warning words in between could be easily understood by Ronggairen. Ronggairen couldn't laugh anymore. She didn't have the same good energy cultivation skills as Huigairen. She stared with a pair of eyes and wished to eat Huigairen's life. It's not because of this one sentence that she had a grudge. When she gave birth to Qingrui, she was young and suffered a lot. Her child also suffered along with her. Kangxi was still a half-year-old child, and his heart was also weak and difficult to resist. Even if he had promised her to keep Qingrui by her side and raise him until he was 1 year old before sending him to his elder brother's house, if it weren't for this slut's dignified demeanor and the use of palace rules to suppress others, her child wouldn't have been sent to the hands of those sons and mothers in his elder brother's house without even getting a bite of milk from her. Until Qingrui died of illness at the age of 3, he never called her Nyang. How could she forget such a grudge? It was just a facade of harmony, but whenever she seized the opportunity, she would definitely bite the benefactor hard. Don't be fooled by the dignified demeanor of both of them, the smell of gunpowder between the lines couldn't be detected by anyone present. Yushi looked left and right, amazed by the commotion before her. I dare not act so recklessly in front of the Empress Dowager and Emperor Kangxi, and I don't know how to make a fuss privately. Empress Ingfei, Rong Guiren, Hui Guiren, along with 2 Dai Guiren and Ji Guiren who had never been involved in any blind activities, these 5 of them are expected to perform several plays together. They will be new next year, and it is feared that the lords of the harem will not even dare to close their eyes when sleeping at night, fearing that it will be calculated. Upon reflection, Yushi felt that she had a big head and was reciting her own Waya surname, praying to gods and worshipping Buddha in her heart. She couldn't let Emperor Kangxi fall in love with her. She was willing to be a vegetarian for her whole life, so that she could be nurtured by the elderly family of the Empress Dowager. Seeing that the situation was a bit difficult to tidy up, the Empress Dowager was also secretly angry. She was about to speak up and dismiss the people in the harem, but unexpectedly, Empress Dowager Ing, who had just been unnoticed, covered her heart and fell down. The little girl beside her exclaimed in surprise, forming a circle around Empress Ing and causing her to lift her heart tightly, hoping that Empress Ying's body would be more energetic. Carrying a sedan chair and calling for the imperial physician, the Cining Palace was also mostly empty for a while. The Empress Dowager sent everyone in the harem to leave first, and Emperor Kangxi also followed Empress Dowager Ying's sedan chair. There were only Empress Dowager and 3 children with big eyes and small eyes left in the palace. The Empress Dowager held the eldest brother in one hand and the little prince in the other, and couldn't help but sigh lightly. After all, the illness of Empress Dowager Ing was unknown, but the ending was more beautiful than the rebuke of Huigue and Rongue. Don't worry, Empress Ingfei. A lucky person has her own destiny and will get better. Yushi timely handed a cup of tea to the Empress Dowager, and when she received it, she stood beside her and gently pinched her shoulders. This action truly made the Empress Dowager feel a little more at ease. After tasting the tea, it was not the usual bitter tea she was used to, but the fragrance of jasmine and a hint of sweetness. Why did you brew flower tea for the AI family so coldly? Didn't Auntie Su Mala tell you what the AI family usually uses? The Empress Dowager took a sip which was not harsh, but rather a bit strange. She glanced at the little girl beside her and waited for someone to explain. Yushi pursed her lips and smiled slightly. Even though she had done enough homework to present the tea, she still showed a hint of caution, making people feel a bit careless. Mammy explained the rules to the servant, but she thought to herself that you seemed to have some stomach problems yesterday and didn't use much for breakfast. If you use strong tea again, it might not be good for your health. You also know that my servant's family is poor, and my family always dares not get sick easily. I feel sorry for it, so I have come up with a set of health preservation methods myself. This jasmine tea is one of them. Although it doesn't cure anything, drinking it regularly can have the effect of strengthening the spleen and nourishing the heart. I have also asked my grandmother about this prescription, and the dried jasmine flowers are also taken from the kitchen. I have violated this rule. Please try it. If you like it, I will often brew it for you. This kind of thoughtful care was something that other servants had never given before. The Empress Dowager looked at Yushi's lovely little face, full of innocent almond eyes, and also saw a hint of offering. There was no way she could not refuse it. She immediately took 2 more sips and even offered Yushi a reward. A handful of silver melon seeds, a few pink or emerald silk flowers, there's nothing difficult to harvest. Yushi quickly thanked the favor and generously chose a pink silk flower to wear on her head, which made her even more likable to the Empress Dowager. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Even cute. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Even cute. The eldest elder brother smelled the sweet breath and also took the Empress Dowager's hand to drink. However, the elder brothers couldn't pay more attention to their food. Firstly, they had to ask the steward mother next to the elder brother, and secondly, they had to ask the imperial physician. With the permission of these 2 people, the elder brothers could only get one. Looking at the pitiful waiting of the 3 children, Yushi knew that even the master in the deep palace was extremely difficult to be, but his life was just more precious. Holding the tea in her hand, the Empress Dowager suddenly remembered something. She pulled the jade spear and asked, "Do you know if there is any suitable tea for those who have always been weak? Or is it beneficial for those who have always worked hard?" The Empress Dowager proposed these 2 things, and Yushi immediately knew who the Empress Dowager was worried about. It must have been Empress Dowager Ing and Emperor Kangxi who had not left. After some thought, he spoke up and said, "If you go back to Empress Dowager, I don't know what kind of weakness this person is. If you still use medicine normally, you can't eat tea indiscriminately anymore. It's not good to use soup and medicine together. If it's normal, it's better to eat tonic than tea. I can't compare with the imperial doctors in the imperial hospital in terms of tonic. I think the imperial doctors have a way. As for those who work hard, it is written in the Zhongzhang Jing that those who work hard are affected by their energy, while those who hurt are affected by their description. Therefore, it is most important to replenish their energy and energy. If one is restless on a daily basis, it can also easily harm the liver. During the day, I brew goji berries, chrysanthemums, and cassia seeds in boiling water. I can drink 1 or 2 cups a day, and before going to bed, I use another cup of amber tea. Boil the sour jujube kernels and Polygonum multiflorum vine, and the color will be like amber. After drinking, I can have a good night's sleep without dreams. Seeing that Yushi was speaking eloquently, the Empress Dowager knew that Yushi was not just a skill she had figured out on her own. It was impossible for an old man to carry it with her. Upon closer examination, it was indeed true. When I was young, I once helped a mother-in-law who had fled to the capital due to a flood. Before leaving, the mother-in-law was grateful to me and forced me to give her a book. It was only then that I realized that the mother-in-law was a person with great abilities when she was young. She had been practicing medicine with her family since childhood and had a great reputation. It's just that my family is in decline and my descendants are not filial, which leads to a miserable old age. I only met a servant by chance, so I was told to learn a few points. Later, my mother-in-law quietly left, and the servant couldn't find anyone else. Yuxuan has some skills in healthcare. It's not because of her mother-in-law, but because the old people always listened to the official account for healthcare before she wore it. Instead, she got sick. In anger, she also got an official account to fight against counterfeiting. Coincidentally, there were also a few friends studying medicine around me, who had accumulated a lot of knowledge after going back and forth. Unexpectedly, it was now in great use. Believing in Yushi's nonsense, the Empress Dowager exclaimed that she was doing well, indicating that good deeds are rewarded with good deeds. Coincidentally, the imperial physician of the elder brothers was also present, so the Empress Dowager asked Yushi to discuss several health preservation plans with the physician and send them to Emperor Kangxi and Empress Ingfei. It doesn't matter whether Empress Dowager Ing uses it or not. Her body is also a matter of time, and she has never been in a good mood. The Empress Dowager showed some concern, but she was only nervous about Emperor Kangxi in her heart. As soon as Emperor Kangxi said that there were many troubles and she couldn't sleep soundly at night, the Empress Dowager became anxious on behalf of others. She couldn't ruin her body just because of these filthy people's filth. Her family was very small, waiting for Emperor Kangxi to spread his branches and leaves. Yushi couldn't help but benefit from the fact that Qi Tai was a young and refreshing person, and there were not so many taboos when using tea, not just medication. After only about a few 15 minutes of discussion, he had a prescription. It's getting late, so when Emperor Kangxi returned to the Cining Palace, Yushi and Yuzhu went to the harem to visit Empress Ing. Emperor Kangxi's prescription was personally delivered by Su Malagu. The two of them didn't delay either. They asked Sister Chunbai to find a good box to put a prescription in. They then followed the official road to Qingchuang Palace. There were not many people on the way, and they held hands and whispered and laughed along the way, which was a rare relaxation. "Yu sister, why are you so amazing? You have good handwriting and know how to use tea party formulas. It's so enviable that people can't even envy you." Yuzhu envies everyone. She is quite pure, half a year younger than Yushi, and this meeting is not limited to first come, just calling out intimately. Yushi smiled and hid, just teach Yuzhu some of her own ability to stand up, so as to bring her closer and avoid causing trouble. "What's here? If you're willing to learn, I'll teach you. After all, it's not difficult. Just remember to memorize more and be more flexible. Let's take good care of the Empress together and help each other." Yuzhu immediately thanked Yushi, and the sound became even more genuine. After a lively time, Yushi looked up and saw Kangxi and his entourage coming out. Even though Kangxi was wearing an indigo-colored robe, the golden dragon embroidery on his chest and arms was still dazzling in the sunlight. Yushi and Yuzhu dared not laugh anymore and knelt down against the wall from a distance. They only greeted Kangxi when they saw the hem of his clothes. The maidservant pays respects to Wan Suiyi, and Wan Suiyi is blessed with golden peace. Kangxi had already seen Yushi, and the little girl wore an extra pink silk flower on her temples. She didn't know what to say, but her smile was even brighter than the flowers. Kangxi inexplicably felt better and raised his hand to invite the two of them to get up. "Where is this going?" Yushi replied with a slight blessing. As Wansui said, "I have been ordered by the Empress to send some health preservation formulas to Empress Ying. Empress Ying's health is not good, and she is worried about it. Empress Yingfei has been sick for several years, but she has not seen any prescription from Huang Mama." Emperor Kangxi was quite curious and did not bother Liang Jiugong to take the box again. He took a step forward and opened the box in Yushi's hand. After reading the words above, I recognized that it belonged to Yushi, and I thought it was Yushi's intention. Before Yushi arrived, Huang Ma did not remember putting in effort in tea. After being released, Emperor Kangxi couldn't help but tease the person, saying, "You've been bothering me. This is good for Empress Ying. Do you know if there's me?" Yushi raised her eyebrows and glanced at Emperor Kangxi, thinking to herself, how could this person be so idle? She was talking nonsense to this little girl for no reason. Shouldn't being an emperor be a daily routine? But who would call him the emperor? Yushi had to respond in a proper manner, but he didn't tell the truth. "Long live, you are strong and muscular, and there is no need to use any nourishing formula." Emperor Kangxi laughed heartily, knowing that he couldn't bear to say that burly and majestic sentence. He only grew up 17 or 18 years later and had to be tailored every year. From this, he could feel some of Yushi's small emotions. He spoke eloquently and was very cute. Seeing that Yushi was sunburned to a white and red hue, with a rosy glow flying around her eyes, Kangxi remembered that the little girl had fainted yesterday, so he didn't say much. He just called people to work and went back to Cining Palace on his own. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Inconsistency between words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Inconsistency between words. It was really hot that day, and even though he was holding a fan all the way, it also exposed Kangxi to the sun. When he entered the Cining Palace, he hurriedly asked someone to set up ice, fan, and wash his hands and face, which made him feel much better. At this moment, the eunuch Wei Zhu, who served tea in the palace, timely brought a cup of herbal tea. Kangxi didn't take it and didn't taste it carefully. It was so hot that it was infuriating. Who else would pay attention to the rules and just lifted the lid of the cow's drink? This cool and slightly bitter taste only caught Kangxi's attention when it entered his throat. After savoring the lingering taste on his tongue for a while, it turned sweet again, and the taste was truly unusual. Where did this tea come from? When Emperor Kangxi asked this, he already had a plan in his mind. His food, clothing, and daily necessities were all predetermined. The people below would never use anything unknown without his permission, and the soup sent from the harem would not be presented hastily. Only the things from his imperial mare were trusted by him the most. Wei Zhu carefully replied, to answer Wan Suiye's question, the 2 tea recipes that the nanny from the Cining Palace was ordered to personally deliver to you just now, 1 day and 1 night, each with the ability to nourish the spirit and qi, nourish the liver and aid sleep. They have already been reviewed by the imperial physician, and I dare to submit them now. Emperor Kangxi smiled and nodded, thinking to himself that indeed, the little girl dared to deceive him. She was truly audacious. Little scammer. Kangxi didn't hide his true feelings for a moment. He smiled and spat out such a sentence, almost causing Wei Zhuhan to lose half of her soul and kowtow to Kangxi repeatedly. I dare not make any empty promises. At the roar of this little servant, Kangxi couldn't help but laugh and cry. He felt that Wei Zhu's brain was not working properly, and Liang Jiugong beside him didn't even notice the embarrassing disciple. He quickly waved his hand to Wei Zhu and asked him to stand outside without obstructing the eyes of Wan Suiyi. Wei Zhu didn't know why. When he went out, he took 3 steps and turned around. In the end, he was stopped by Emperor Kangxi and asked someone to bring him another bowl of tea. This cup of tea was only a matter of 2 or 3 sips, and he had not tasted any flavor before it disappeared. But who could have said that Wei Zhu refused to say? As for Wan Suiyi, Grandma said, I can only use 2 cups of tea during the day, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Drinking too much can actually make me feel unwell. Isn't it better if I brew biluakun for you? Get it? Why is this tea so much the same as that little scammer, full of temperament, not casual? I don't know if that little scammer is also like this tea, rejecting people with a slight bitterness on the surface, but in fact, although the sweetness inside is unforgettable. Emperor Kangxi was a bit mischievous, waving his hand and simply asking Wei Zhu to serve the tea casually. After a while of rest, he began to deal with the situation and occasionally took a sip or 2 of new tea, which seemed a bit tasteless. He couldn't help but think of that little scammer again. What is that little scammer doing at this moment? Upon inquiry, it turned out that he was still lingering in the Qingchuang Palace. Wan Suiyi, can you ask the servant to summon Miss Yushi? Xiao Yuanzi, who had gone to inquire about the news, returned. Seeing that Wan Suiyi had paid such attention to a girl for the first time, he couldn't help but think about it. In order to invite credit, he wished to have someone immediately tie up the jade robe and send it to Wan Suiyi's dragon bed. Emperor Kangxi frowned slightly and took a sharp look at him. This servant's mind was also a bit dirty. He didn't think about that kind of thing, it was just curiosity. What did I call her to do? Did she cover for your work? How dare Xiao Yuanzi respond to Emperor Kangxi's words? He has been apologizing repeatedly and knows that he didn't flatter him correctly today. He flattered his horse's leg and said it so directly. How can he ask Wan Suiyi not to wipe away his face? Emperor Kangxi was too lazy to listen to people talk about things, so he directly sent Liang Jiugong to take people out. But he had to be careful and not speak recklessly. It's not bad for his reputation to spread rumors about it. With a glance, Liang Jiugong immediately understood, with a faint smile on his face, and quickly took Xiao Yuanzi out. Xiao Yuanzi trembled and followed behind Liang Jiugong with his back bent like a shrimp. After walking a long way out, he boldly gave Liang Jiugong some silver and asked the person a question. Liang Gonggong, do you see what Wan Suiyi means? I am foolish and have been inquiring about Wan Suiyi's news for 4 or 5 years, but I still can't figure it out. I am trembling with fear every day. Every time I say the wrong thing, my neck feels cold. Thanks to Wan Suiyi's magnanimity, I can accommodate a servant. Liang Jiugong smiled and didn't mind the amount of silver. He just accepted it to make people feel at ease, saying, what are you afraid of? Your credit is worth remembering. If you are good at doing things, don't be afraid. As for speculation, I can't say much about it, but do you think that when Wan Suiyi hunts, does he prefer to ride his own horse and chase the prey, or does he prefer the guards around him to kill the prey and bring it to him? There's no need to think too much about it, Xiao Yuanzi quickly replied before realizing, oh my. Thank you for your advice. Wan Suiyi is our Baturu, and he doesn't like to give away prey. He needs to ride his own horse and pull his bow to get fun. Liang Jiugong smiled and glanced towards the direction of the harem, saying, it's not true. Wan Suiyi has met too many obedient sheep. After finally meeting a lively deer, he naturally needs to be patient and find this way to chase the deer. You have to manage your subordinates well. Who dares to harm Wan Suiyi's good deeds? If Wan Suiyi doesn't need to speak up, you will be the first one Liang Jiugong cleans up. And seeing the person with a friendly face just now suddenly change his expression, his eyes pricking like thorns. Little Unz dared not cause trouble, and his heart was obedient and obedient. He repeatedly bowed and nodded to ensure that he would not offend General Manager Liang. With Xiao Yuanzi's assurance, Liang Jiugong played a face-changing trick and smiled a bit, inquiring carefully about what some Yushi girls were doing and why they stayed in Qingchuang Palace for a long time. Xiao Yuanzi stepped forward and whispered in Liang Jiugong's ear. Liang Jiugong didn't hesitate, so he went back and reported to Wan Suiyi again. Look at the restless appearance of Wan Suiyi all morning. If you don't ask him to know more, he might not even be able to bear to read the book. Speaking of which, this jade spear is also a powerful one. It's like using a cup of tea to captivate Wan Suiyi and make him lose his soul. If you don't know, it's like giving someone intoxicating soup. Long live Lord, Empress Dowager Ing has left Miss Yushi to admire flowers. Empress Dowager Ing has been raising a treasure for several years, and it is rare to encounter someone who is knowledgeable. Lord Kangxi nodded, and was not surprised at what Princess Ing did. Today's fainting was just a way of getting out of the encirclement. There was no need to pretend in his own palace. He was just surprised at Yu Xian's insight, smiled, and looked through the fold for a while. After a while, he opened his mouth, and rewarded 2 dim sum. Empress Ing is tired today. Please enjoy a lotus cold cake and a pine nut milk pastry. Liang Jiugong was ordered to do it right away. He smiled at the corners of his mouth. He thought that the reward of dim sum was rare. Long live God was really duplicitous and said that he would reward Princess Ing. But Princess Ing could not eat lotus jelly cake in these 2 ways. What was clearly put on display was the little girl who wanted to reward Yu Xian. End of this chapter.